The Shop to the Apartment. Written and read by W.P. Thrift. You can find me at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. Chapter 2. Moving In. Three forms of identification is a funny thing. A fake driver's license can be obtained near any liquor store, so long as a young man with a printer has an entrepreneurial spirit in the local town. A library card can be obtained pretty quickly in a rundown library that never sees any business. And then that same fake driver's license can be shown a second time if it's near 5 p.m. and the person at the desk is more interested in watching the clock, wishing to go home soon, than attentively paying attention to what you're showing them. Far as proof of income goes, that's a bit trickier. But it's easier to forge if the person at the desk notices a trash can fire outside and has to run take care of it, in a blind panic forgetting to put away any of the paperwork and leaving the client alone in the office. Now how did that silly fire get there anyway? Peter hurried quickly around the desk, banging his knee on a chair along the way, and wrote in all the info about himself that he had ideally liked to be true, including the apartment complex had been pre-approved for the delay of the first month's rent. It was $420 a month, plus a retainer of an equivalent amount, and so if the first month's payment was skipped over, then at the end of the month he would owe a total of $1,260. That would be no problem for him, as he planned to do the responsible thing and take up multiple jobs until he got all these crazy bills under control. After that, he'd possibly begin to save up for a trip to a bigger city in a better place, like New York. He could dream, at least. But one step at a time. He had to finish all the paperwork and grab a key to any unoccupied apartment here on Turtle Creek, a small community in Cattellville known for its rapidly expanding apartment complex. Pulling some files out from a cabinet, he roughly forged the landlord's signature at the bottom, and then filed his own paperwork away as he put the documents he had just pulled out back where he got them from. Done and done. Peter left the front office and searched around for his apartment number, 187. He hoped it would be near the pool or near the gym. Alas, it was the apartment furthest from, and also the closest to the front gate, meaning the one place that would be the noisiest from all the nearby traffic. Just his luck. Now that Peter had a place to live here in Cattellville, he wasn't about to start resting on his laurels. There was much work to be done. While going over a newspaper's job section, he spoke on the phone, a crappy wired phone which he couldn't walk very far with, to the local newspaper to ask them about putting an ad in the paper of his own. Housemates wanted. Having others around to help pay the bills would be a huge boon towards his dream of not getting kicked out at the end of the month. Not to mention possibly saving up for a trip to a much better place. America, this America anyway, was where he had dreamed of living for the longest time, and now that he was here, he didn't want to squander his time in a small, shitty town. So, the sooner he could save up for a move to the Big Apple, the better. Peter only half paid attention to the person on the phone while walking around the apartment to get the layout of it. He was careful to note emergency escape routes while doing so, which were primarily windows. He never wanted to be trapped anywhere if someone came for him, a paranoia which had served him well in life. He also had to check for squatters which may have broken in here to live without the landlord knowing about it, of which there was only one. And also he checked for ninjas which may be waiting to assassinate him, of which there were only two. The front door of the apartment opened to a good-sized living room. It was empty, as he had yet to go dumpster diving to look for furniture, and a long hallway from there, leading to a kitchen on the right and a bathroom after that, and 2 bedrooms on the left. At the end of the royal blue carpeted hall, which stood in stark contrast to the eggshell white walls, was an air conditioning unit. Peter drew close to the AC, pulling the phone cord out of the wall and cutting off his call to the paper. He cursed about this while leaning in to listen to the AC. While it was very powerful, freezing him as he grew close to it, he could hear something that sounded off. Leaning close, he heard it more clearly. Drip, drip, drip. Water was dripping inside of the AC unit. He decided to completely ignore this potential problem, certain that it would never come back to bite him. A week later, Peter had already obtained several jobs which he'd start working at soon, and he had found a good deal of furniture along the side of the road. A couch now set in the living room with only some rat feces still smeared on it, and there was an entertainment center against the wall across from the couch, with several chairs propped up against it. Those were load-bearing chairs, because he had found the entertainment center in pieces, and it never quite fit back together again when he tried to repair it. The chairs held it up, and if anyone were to move those chairs, the whole thing would collapse. A TV sat in the middle of it as the only actual thing of entertainment he owned. The TV's monitor was cracked in the upper right corner, causing most of the TV to be discolored when he turned it on. But that couldn't be helped. Maybe someday he'd have more stuff set up there on the entertainment center. He could envision stereos and game consoles set up there too, and lots of DVDs. It was something to look forward to when the paycheck started rolling in. A bed and desk were placed in both bedrooms. He originally had one of those desks in the living room as well, between the couch and the TV, but after banging his knee on it 100 times, he decided to move it to his bedroom, where he promptly banged his knee on it again before going to bed that night. The beds had both been found at the dump, and he assumed they were both in perfectly good shape until he realized neither of them were originally water beds, making all the squishing they did feel quite unnerving to him. But he'd manage. There was also a small screened-in patio area through a glass door across the living room, which Peter liked to sit in early in the mornings, reading books he had never had the chance to catch up on back in South America. Not that he had those original books, but rather he actually took advantage of the library card he had obtained as part of his forgery setup when renting out this apartment. The card went to the Silver Pines Library here in town, attended by a young librarian named Amy. Of course, Peter couldn't go there without flirting with her, but she seemed far from interested in him, or in anyone, for that matter. The doorbell rang, and Peter hopped up from his chair in the patio, ran face first into the sliding glass door, opened it while cursing, then banged his knee on the couch while trying to hurry over to the door and answer it. He was expecting them. A group of guys had called him early this morning, right before the crack of dawn, asking about his housemate's wanted ad in the newspaper. Peter was thrilled to have gotten a response from that already and couldn't wait to meet his new pals. Peter opened the door to see 4 guys. 2 of them were smiling and trying to act polite. One was trying to smoke a rock he had found. An actual rock, not slang for anything. And the 4th looked incredibly nervous, glancing around in all directions. "Guys!" the nervous guy tried to say, but the lead guy, widely smiling, interrupted him. "What's up? You must be the guy, right?" he asked. Peter gasped. "I've always wanted to be the guy!" He had to clear his throat and try to calm down. "Heh, then, hells yes I am. The name's Peter Crackett, though you can call me King of the Wild Frontier." "Yeah, okay," the lead guy said, with no intentions of ever calling him that. "Let's get inside before anybody sees us already," the nervous guy said in a hushed tone. "What are you acting all edgy for?" the lead guy asked him. It should be pointed out that the 4 guys who showed up on Peter's doorstep were wearing orange prison uniforms, which were covered in filth and torn in places from what seemed to be barbed wire. "Say," Peter began, finally noticing this himself. "You didn't tell me you were freshly released convicts on the phone earlier."
We weren't released.
The only other guy who was smiling said, a rotund man who wore strange, glowing goggles on his face.
We just escaped.
Never mind my friend here. The lead guy quickly interrupted. As I was trying to say before, his name is Bowman, the guy attempting to smoke a rock is Lantis, the guy over here acting like he's covered in spiders is my bitch, Patrick, and I am Radix. A pleasure to meet you all. Peter was very polite.
What were you in prison for?
Well, us three were framed.
Clearly,
Radix said. And Patrick was in prison for some white-collar bullshit. He actually worked in the mailroom and got thrown under the bus when his boss was caught money laundering. It's actually kind of funny. To me, at least.
Let's go inside,
Patrick cried out, unable to take the pressures of being clearly visible any longer.
I just got out, and I'm never going back.
Sure, Peter said. Come on in. This is perfect, too, because 4 is the exact number of roommates I was hoping for. And then a swooping pterodactyl snatched Patrick up off the ground and flew away with him. Guess you'll have to just make do with the 3 of us, Radix said. Damn it! Yeah, ah well. Peter shrugged. It couldn't be helped. They all went inside and made themselves at home, rather than simply checking out the place like Peter had intended for them to do. He hadn't actually agreed to let any of them stay here yet, but it already seemed like it was too late to stop them. Lantis went straight to Peter's room, the first bedroom on the left, and made a nest out of old clothing on the floor, on the other side of Peter's bed, in a cramped place between the bed and the wall, and went fast to sleep.
What's his problem?
Peter asked.
Nicotine fit,
Radix explained. Radix, meanwhile, went straight to the couch and laid out on it. He took to it very well, like he already owned it. Peter wanted to ask them about what they'd be doing to pay the bills, but instead asked them about something he was far more curious about.
So what was it like in prison?
Radix didn't even want to think about it, so he rolled over and went to sleep on the couch. Bowman, meanwhile, just chuckled to himself, having had far more pleasant memories of his time in the slammer. Flashback. Screaming and beating Bowman with a nightstick to no effect, the 3rd guard tried to pry his goggles off, as such contraband was not allowed in lockup. They should have been removed when he was being checked in, and the guard had no idea why they hadn't been. The goggles lit up brightly as the guard grabbed them, and he was electrocuted like the 2 guards before him, his hand scorched black before the oscillating jolt ended, sending him flying back. Bowman was out in the courtyard, surrounded by 3 unconscious guards, but also surrounded by 100 other prisoners of all shapes and sizes. They were all backing away from him in unison. Their circle, once intended to be menacing, now expanding impotently. Bowman looked left, and then he looked right.
You are all my bitches now,
Bowman declared. End of flashback.
Oh, it was okay,
Bowman told Peter.
Say, do you have anything in the fridge?
Yeah, Peter said. Then before he could even say what it was, Radix awoke from the couch and headed straight for the kitchen. Lantis, too, somehow heard this and awoke from his nest next to Peter's bed, and rushed out as well. The 2 of them, along with Bowman, ended up wedged together between the half-door frame and the kitchen counter at the entrance to the kitchen.
You knuckleheads!
Radix declared. Whoop, 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 whoop. Lantis whooped in response.
How dare you and yours?
Bowman declared.
Oh, ha, nipple pinchy.
But his threat of pinching their nipples was useless, as his arms were stuck. Peter began.
You all do realize I haven't actually said any of you can stay here yet, right? Maybe I shouldn't be going through my fridge.
The trio managed to break free of their stooges scene and get to the fridge, which only had a box of raw hamburger meat in it. Bowman and Lantis both took a hunk of meat to eat raw, but Lantis spat his out as he didn't realize this wasn't a good idea until he tried it. Bowman, meanwhile, knew well what he was doing and didn't care if it was raw or not. Radix looked around for a pan to cook it in and spotted a small grill Peter had placed on top of the oven. He figured that was good enough and snatched up some hamburger meat to flatten out and make patties with. Of course, being a nice guy, he was sure to make enough patties for everyone, not just for himself.
You do have buns, or at least bread, right?
Radix asked Peter.
Up in the cabinet I have an old stale loaf I got from out of Price Low for 25 cents, with change I found out on the street,
Peter replied.
Ah, that brings back so many terrible memories,
Radix replied, though despite his wording there was true nostalgia in his voice. Peter shook his head clear.
Hold on, wait a second. I still haven't told any of yous that you can live here.
Well, can we? Bowman asked, eating a hunk of raw meat.
Can you pay?
Peter demanded.
Sure,
Bowman replied, lying like he was taught to when him and Radix were rehearsing this meeting earlier.
Then you're perfect,
Peter declared.
Welcome to the apartment.
In a damp, dark basement across town, a few members of the military still moaned, barely alive. They were all up on meat hooks hanging from the ceiling, while Sweeney worked diligently over a large bathtub to try and squeeze dry all the meat he had gathered a week ago. One soldier, half blind from the discolored, swollen flesh around his eyes, worked slowly to quietly attempt to free himself from the large hook, which went in through his back and out again through his right breast, crushing the ribs in between. Through some miracle, his lung had slid around it, and none of his splintered ribs pierced anything important, or he'd be dead already. The barb kept catching on his skin, but through sheer willpower he was able to tear through it and gradually lift himself up higher. He had to move slowly to avoid the giant noticing him. Slowly, carefully, almost there. Barking, growling, sharp teeth nipping at his heel, the soldier's heart sped up and his arms went weak from pain, brought on by accelerated fear. A dog was chewing on his foot now, and the moment he let go of the hook, his torso slammed back down onto it. An unbelievable amount of pain destroyed whatever willpower he had built up through determination. He let out an involuntary scream, tears streaming down his face. Sweeney didn't turn to him, didn't react at all, but he knew that the giant must know now. He hadn't seen a dog all week. Where had it come from? A light crept over his face. A door, far above. He turned and looked up. Some lady, wearing a purple nightgown, was at the top of the stairs, looking down. The house above was well lit, and several more large, angry dogs, all chow-chows by what he could tell, were at the top of the stairs. Only a single Doberman in the pack, which had ran down the stairs first to bite and bark at him.
Lady, please help me,
the soldier cried up to her, begging.
Please!
She ignored him. She had more pressing matters on her mind, something that needed more urgent care.
Meow!
The lady cried out in a shrill voice.
The dogs need food!
Sweeney stopped working completely, but didn't otherwise move. He snorted loudly, then returned to work.
Meow! Don't ignore me!
She screamed.
Feed the dogs! The dogs, man! Feed the dogs! The dogs need food!
Sweeney stopped working again. His breathing intensified. His hands trembled with rage.
The dogs need food, man! Feed the dogs!
His breaths became quick and raspy, frantic even. He rose from the stool. Next to the bathtub one of the soldier's dearest friends was being drained out in, and stomped furiously across the concrete floor, batting several hooks out of the way as he went to grab his gigantic battle axe, leaning against the wall of the basement. All of the chow-chows ran downstairs to greet him, happily wagging their rusty red tails. The Doberman ran over as well, getting under his legs and nearly causing him to trip.
Meow! Are you feeding the dogs?
The lady cried back down.
Are you his mom?
The soldier called up the stairs.
Please, you don't realize what your son is doing down here. This is hell. This place is hell.
Sweeney and his mom both ignored him while Sweeney walked over to the corner where all the dogs were gathered. He glared down at them, hatred in his eye, lifting his giant battle axe up. Inside his sewn-shut mouth, his tongue licked the back of his teeth.
You're feeding the dogs now? Because the dogs need food.
His mom continued to cry. His breathing grew even faster, and then he slammed his battle axe down towards the dogs and sliced clean open a gigantic bag of tasty dog food, which spilled out everywhere on the floor. The dogs hungrily chomped it down.
Oh, good! You fed the dogs!
His mom called down.
Now be sure to scoop up the oopsies while they're down there!
Sweeney beat his chest several thunderous times to try and let out his aggression so that he wouldn't go into another blind rage, which is why they don't have that noisy parakeet anymore. And then he stomped across the basement to the dog's pooping box to prepare it for them.
Isn't it nice living here with me to remind you to feed the dogs?
His mom called down.
You should stay with me forever. That way the dogs will always get food.
Sweeney stuffed fresh newspapers down into the box, flattening them out along the bottom, when suddenly he froze. It was today's paper, August 2002, and in the wanted section there was an ad for someone requesting roommates at his new apartment. Everyone was getting along famously at the apartment now, as Radix passed out hamburgers to everybody. There was no toppings at all, as the fridge was super bare bones. There wasn't even any ketchup. But when everyone's starving, nobody complains. Bowman had just set up a computer in the second bedroom in the apartment, which he was declaring his room. The computer was stolen from their next-door neighbor, who hid a key under the doormat while they were away at work. So that was made easy enough for him. "Does it have Groundskeeper 3 on it?" Lantis asked. "Oh, no. You are not going to start up with that MMO bullshit again," Radix ordered. He recognized the name of the MMO Lantis had played for a stretch back at the shop, while they still owned a computer repair business in town. Not that he had paid any attention to the MMO while Lantis was playing it, but good lord at the times Lantis had ranted about it since then. After Radix and Lantis had ended up being cellmates in prison, Radix was literally a captive audience for all of Lantis's long nights spent ranting about what bullshit that game was to play. So, of course, given the very first opportunity available, Lantis wanted to play it again, because that's how the minds of MMO addicts worked. Speaking of addictions, Bowman had also magically produced more cigarettes at some point. So Lantis managed to get over his manic muteness from going a full morning without smoking. Cigs were surprisingly common in prison, and Lantis almost didn't want to leave, as he'd be leaving his dealer behind. There was a knock at the door, and even though Peter was on the patio reading, and Radix was laying on the couch doing nothing because he couldn't find anything to watch on the 30 channels the TV had to offer, Radix still didn't get up to answer it. So Peter had to stop what he was doing and go see who it was. A Titanic man stood on the other side, with crazy orange hair, wearing a gargantuan potato sack for clothing. A terrifying battle axe was strapped to his back.
"Yeah?"
Peter asked. Sweeney held up the newspaper with the ad on it.
"So, you wanna lives here?"
Peter wanted to make sure. Sweeney nodded.
"And you are?"
Peter asked. Sweeney lifted his potato sack, revealing that his name was tattooed down the shaft of his penis. Sweeney Matt.
"Okay, welcome to the apartment. Matt, my name's Peter, and that lazy asshole over there that didn't come to the door is Radix."
Peter indicated.
"Lantis and Bowman are also around here's somewhere."
Peter decided to just go ahead and let him live here, as he wanted at least 4 roommates, and was certain now that, combined, they would easily be able to pay the rent. He stopped Sweeney from smashing through the door frame, which angered Sweeney, and caused his breathing to intensify.
"Hold your damn horses! I don't want to lose the retainer to this apartment before I've even paid it!"
Peter scolded him. Sweeney was aghast that anyone would dare have the gall to scold him, as usually people just ran screaming from him. Perhaps he would have to crush this little man to stop this incident from setting a precedent that strong words was all it took to survive him. Peter ran to the kitchen to fetch some cooking oil, then ran back to slather Sweeney in it, much to his chagrin. Sweeney growled and hissed as Peter poured cooking oil all over him, and then went to grab and crush him to death. But the oil was already soaked all over the palms of his hands, and so Peter easily slipped out and just kept going.
"There,"
Peter said.
"Now come on in."
Sweeney easily fit through the frame of a door, which was many times too small for him to fit through without breaking. Yet it still held together. It was as though Sweeney had a great deal of experience fitting very large objects into very small places. Trying to take a step forward, Sweeney shot down the hallway, all the way to the very end of it. The cooking oil was just too slippery for him to stop himself. He turned and forced his way into the bedroom to the left at the end of the hall, Bowman's room. He had decided this would be where he slept. After he forced his way in, Bowman came running back out of it, chirping like an agitated bird. Bowman declared.
"A monster just came into my room. Bad, Peter. Keep the front door locked."
"He's your new roommate,"
Peter replied.
"Oh, okay."
Bowman immediately accepted this, and then went back to his room to get back on his computer. Unfortunately, Sweeney had already gotten a hold of it and was using it to look up porn. Angry, Bowman left to go rob his neighbor of their other computer so he'd have one of his own to work with. That concludes Chapter 2 of The Apartment. Tune in every Tuesday for new chapters. If you'd like to reach me, you can do so at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. That's LANTISARMSTRONG. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's chapter, Chillin' at the Apartment.